On January 1st, 2002, the Orzu Brancu prison authorities decided to conduct a little experiment. A general relocation of about 60 inmates from their safety cells to the free cells with the other inmates. This means putting the most dangerous inmates inside the general population cells, almost 5 inmates per cell. The goal was to see which inmates were potential aggressors. The guards called it a day, despite the loud yelling for help around 9 p.m. The next day, an assault team assisted the police and found 45 decapitated bodies, mutilated by the use of stabbing weapons and chunchus, which are made by the inmates themselves. The government and the press were told that 27 people had died. Just 27. This is just one of the many examples of systematic torture and murdering that goes on inside Orzu Brancu prison. It's also the reason why this prison has seen the most uncontrollable riots, the deadliest clashes of organized crime groups, and the largest violation of human rights. In this video, we're taking you through a tale of injustice and tragedy inside the Orzu Brancu prison in Brazil. Located in the southwest tip of the Amazon, in Porto Velho, Rondônia, stands the Orzu Brancu prison, which was built in 1996 to hold 350 inmates, but forcefully holds 900 inmates in 60 cells, almost 15 per cell. That's for the convicted members, but for the pre-trial detainees, they're stuffed inside a holding cell that was built for 50, but it reportedly held 160 inmates, almost thrice the amount. That explains why it's been reported countless times by Amnesty International for overcrowding. One time, a prisoner had to suspend himself from the window bars to have enough room to sleep. The overcrowding issue could have been fixed by moving some of the prisoners to the model prison adjacent to it, but according to Amnesty International, there was a dispute over payment between the company that built the prison and the Rondônia state government, so they couldn't use it. In a court case that took place in 2006, the petitioners reported that medical and dental care at the prison is so poor that many persons deprived of freedom, or PDFs, died due to lack of care. The physicians hired were not diligent, and they didn't even have on-site dentists and social workers. When they visited the prison in April of 2002, they met with poorly trained and underpaid guards who had been unable to control detainees, which is why they have armed military policemen running the prison, which goes against Brazilian law. These military policemen are instructed to use necessary force, but records show us that it was misused almost every single time. Take, for example, the 2nd of January 2002 riot that we talked about. Unfortunately, it didn't stop there. On February 18, 2002, the bodies of 3 inmates were found in a tunnel beneath one cell. 2 days later, there were murder attempts against 3 cell inmates, and on March 8th, there were new murder attempts, and the next day, the inmates destroyed 11 cells. On March 10th, 2 inmates were murdered in a courtyard in the presence of other inmates, and the Special Forces did not avoid this happening, according to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights report. On the 14th of March, the Commission requested that the state adopt precautionary measures to protect the life and personal safety of the other inmates. But did that help? About a month later, an inmate was murdered after 50 chuncho stabs. On the 2nd of May, another death by chuncho stabs. On the 3rd of May, an inmate died during an operation carried out by the State Secretariat for Security, Defense, and Citizenry. On May 8th, another murder, this time using blows with a contusive object. And on May 10th, an inmate was murdered and dismembered by other inmates. That means, from the 1st of January until June 5th, almost 37 people had been brutally murdered within the Orzu Brancu prison. Later, on June 10th, one of the inmates named Evandro Mota de Pala was seriously wounded when the penitentiary agent, in passing the shotgun to a colleague, accidentally set off the trigger, wounding the inmate, who was taken to João Paulo II Hospital. Although it was reported as a misfire, it's not always a misfire. If you enjoyed this video so far, please subscribe to my channel. It takes a lot of time and research to produce these videos, so a sub would mean a lot. Okay, back to the video. When 2 executive directors of Harvard Law School's Human Rights Program paid a visit to Orzu Brancu, they documented that the guards routinely fired live rounds at prisoners as they cowered in their cells. Some prisoners still had bullets lodged in their bodies months after being hit. All the more proof that the prisoners underwent systematic torture. Luckily, two Brazilian NGOs at the time made sure that this kind of behavior didn't prevail. It's safe to say that some things have changed, but according to one of the fellows in the Human Rights Program, the situation now is appalling, and that things would be a lot worse if there were no international attention on the prison. So now, with Amnesty International's appeal and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, you'd think that there'd be a drastic change in numbers. But you can tell that's not the case. The overcrowding was getting much worse, and there were already gangs inside the prison, so the inmates decided to tackle this injustice with a gruesome tragedy. In April of 2004, the inmates took over the prison for 5 days, killing almost 9 inmates. Later that same year, the rebellious inmates had another uprising, this time for 4 days. One of the gang leaders, Paulo de Sousa, was transferred to a different facility by the prosecutor after his attempted escape. His gang members waited until Sunday's visiting day, and then took nearly 200 of the visitors as hostages on Christmas. Most of them were women, and they demanded the return of their gang leader. The Rondônia State Police said that authorities broke the impasse by agreeing to return Paulo de Sousa before the hostages were released. After all, they were armed with makeshift knives and claimed to have killed some inmates and hostages. But later, when the police searched the grounds for the bodies and the cells for weapons, the authorities didn't reveal whether they found any. By now, you may be thinking how easy it might be to start a riot and take over this prison. The truth is, the security system here is weak. In 2006, there was a report published about the persons deprived of freedom at Urso Branco prison, which they claimed that they broke 30 to 40 padlocks per week and built underground tunnels that link to various cells. In one of the random security checks in April of 2004, they uncovered 24 chuchos, 2 knives, and 4 iron bars. According to the report, at the beginning of the workday, the prison guards frequently threw gas bombs at the persons deprived of freedom, and then required that they take off their clothes and run the gauntlet to get to the prison courtyard. This same report named about 97 members and their causes of death. Most of them were killed by other inmates, and the rest were a mix of killed intentionally by an officer and killed in a mass riot or massacre. All these court cases and provisional measures were implemented for control, but they're still a long way from that. In 2017, there was another prison riot, this time between 2 of the biggest crime gangs in Brazil. Brazilian state authorities claim that at least 60 inmates died during this riot, and according to the state public security secretary Sergio Fontes, the inmates made a few demands to end the riot, which hints at a killing spree organized by members of a local gang against those of another that's based in Sao Paulo. What we can see here is a pattern of tragedy that erupts only when injustice is served. Some might side with the inmates and say their right to riot in situations like overcrowding and getting rid of a prison director makes sense, but didn't take them long to use riots as a way to get whatever they want. This leaves us wondering who to side with: the inmates, who organize these massacres in the name of injustice, or the prison authorities, who look the other way on such tragedies. We'd love to know what you think in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.